Hi there, my name is Prof Lauria Santiago, and this is a presentation on workflow ideas for historians. I teach history at Rutgers. I love doing research, but I am not so much in love with writing. Why this? Because everybody seems to be doing a little bit of this, but not enough of it. And I'm sharing what I've learned over the years, and I welcome your contributions to this as a conversation. And so write to me. At the end, my email address is listed there. What is this? 5 sections and 5 pregones, better known as pieces of advice. Software tools, structure, making your own maps, flow and habits, on-site, and then advanced tools for writing. Software tools. Learn your software before you need to use it. That's the best advice for this category. Anytime you spend ahead of time learning your tools will be very productive later. I will introduce you to some software tools that I am familiar with and I've used over the years. File management, graphics management, PDF management and optical character recognition, indexing and searching, note-taking, clipping, utilities, task management, bibliographic management, and tools that allow you to integrate one piece with another. Tools that help us save files, including some hardware options, send files, talking to the cloud, so to speak, backing up and archiving your files. I'll explain all of these individually. File management, that's very basic, is also really important. And Windows File Manager is kind of a useful tool, but is very primitive. And I recommend that you replace it or enhance it. And this is File Manager of the Windows flavor, but with an add-on that I downloaded that allows you tabbed workspaces. So you can see here home, downloads, box, Latin American studies, whatever, and each one of those is a file listing that I can quickly go to. So I automatically have this file manager open all of these tabs with the basic projects that I work on. And this is obviously beyond research, teaching, and administration, and so forth, but it applies just the same to like 5 different chapters or themes or whatever, right? So tabbed file managing, and also there's something that I used to enhance, but right now it's decent except for some glitches. As you see here, it's already glitching, is the file view function, right? It's not scaling correctly to this monitor, but you can see what's in a JPEG. So that's a view option that you open the panel to basically see what's in there. And it's gotten fancier with PDF, so you can actually scroll through pages of a PDF. And it allows you to rename the file without having to open the text, which is something I find incredibly useful. Right now this is like a numerical naming here that I don't know where it came from. If I wanted to rename it, I can just read this and type it in here. So anyway, tabbed file manager with good preview. And there's some fancier ones on the market. It's just that the Windows one has gotten better and better. And the alternative that I use two alternatives for file managing of the basic sort. This one is called FreeCommander. And actually it's not free because I pay for the subscription, because I made a lifelong donation of like $20, so I keep getting the updates. And here I have two panels that reproduce the same sort of thing, and they're tabbed, right? And these tabs are locked. And whereas the regular file manager, I emphasize the use of research materials. In this one, it's my chapters. And I'm working on 2 books right now, so this is one, and this is the other, right? And at any one moment, I know that I can open this and go straight to where I was at. And these are tabs that are saved, and it gives me the files that are in that folder, because that's how I organize the files for each chapter, right? And that's important as well, because all of these things work together, right, based on your own designs. And chapter 7, whatever, right? And conclusion and outline. And here I have documents that I'll talk about later. Obviously an outline, but the plans and to-do documents, and the shortcuts, which is a tool that I sort of invented. I'll explain that in another part of the presentation. And check it out, the reviews from the publisher. I have a contract for that one. This one is not quite there yet, and I don't even remember what's in those chapter folders, right? Okay. Now there's another utility that I use for the same kind of thing. It's just much more customizable, and it's called Directory OPUS. I'll give you a glimpse of it here while I open it. Here it is, and I gotta move it over to your side of the screen. Yep, that didn't work. And you can see here that it's much more customizable with panels. It does the same thing, but it's a little bit more geeky. It gives you a lot more options, and it costs money, but it's like $10 or $20, something like that. Directory OPUS. And it has some built-in tools that others don't have, for like synchronizing folders, printing, converting. You can map a network drive, which is a lot easier here. And you can rename, and you can batch rename, which is something, you take 100 files and you just say add a prefix to the existing names of those files, or a suffix, or change them all into something else. Archive 1, 2, 3, 4 in sequential order. And also finding duplicates, and just finding files also. So these are very powerful tools, and most people don't spend the time to sort of get the higher level functions from them. Let me introduce you to 2 software tools that I use for file management of research materials. And these can be basically graphics, but PDFs as well, and Word files. This is Paperport by Kofax. It's version Professional 14. It's relatively inexpensive. What this allows me to do is to go to my research folder. Right now I have everything visible, but it's possible to make all your other files disappear from view and only work with the ones that you want. So this is a New York City project, and I have a folder structure for my archival work, which is basically what I use this for, but it creates small versions of the images, right? And then I can do whatever I want with them. I can reorder them, I can group them, I can change them and search them, I can change them into a PDF, I can rotate them, I could edit them for contrast if they're not legible. I can tag them with keywords that through a system that the software has that makes them searchable. I can scan directly into this software. It talks to your scanner. And what I find most useful is the function that allows me to turn these into text really easily, or change the color and the contrast to make them more legible or presentable, to rotate them, to edit them as photos. But photos, this is not exactly a photo editor. This is a document-oriented editor. So there's a lot of functions for organizing. You can split the desktop so you have two things at the same time if you want to be working with two different folders. It allows you for searching. You can change the size of the thumbnails. You can open a preview window where the selected document is enhanced. You can take a JPEG and drag it to your calendar or your email or a PDF or a Word, and it automatically turns it into text. So this helps you manipulate your files and your folders. It doesn't determine how you structure those. That's a separate question, right? Okay. The other tool that is very similar is FileCenter. FileCenter is a little bit more expensive. It's a little bit more powerful in how you select the materials that you're going to work with, kind of workspace model. It uses cabinets and drawers. You can see that I'm selecting them here as tabs. So the interface is a little bit more up-to-date style-wise. And so I have a cabinet for New York City materials that are new, my plans, my research notes, and so forth. So I'm not going to get too much into the file structure, but the point is that it is the same kind of resource that allows you to edit, view, change your JPEGs especially, but it works obviously with any kind of file. And you can scan into this, you can rename, you can tag metadata for keyword searching, you can change the appearance of the image, you can run character recognition internally. It has some advanced options as well. And this is more oriented to an office workflow, but much of it applies to our kinds of work. Right? Resizing, editing the images. You can resize the panes very easily. In general, when I want to do something quickly, I use Paperport. When I want to dig in, I use FileCenter. These panels can be rearranged in whatever way you want. Right now there's a lot of wasted space in this view because of the place I put the folders. For turning JPEGs into PDFs, it works as well. And it allows you to sort of have a systemic view of everything you have. Right? These are PDFs. Notice how it shows you the first page of the PDF, even if it's a multi-page PDF. So it allows you to do different things with the PDFs, including OCRing the text. See if I can show you some actual archival work. So the software is useful for organizing, for initial editing and resorting and renaming. Not so much for reading, but I've used it for reading as well, although I have some separate advice for reading. So that's it for the file management tools. There are other equivalent programs, but actually this is kind of a weak spot in the software offerings out there. That there's not that many, and there's definitely none that are dedicated to the kind of work that we do. For PDF management and optical character recognition, I use two tools. One is familiar Adobe Acrobat, but Adobe Acrobat comes in different flavors, and there's a Pro version that you can pay for, and then there's a standard package 16-bit version that comes with, at least at Rutgers, a paid membership through Rutgers. We're used to using Adobe for reading files, but the powerful part of Adobe is creating files, which you can do sometimes directly from a file manager. You just click on a bunch of images and you say turn into a PDF, and you can turn it into a readable PDF. So Adobe has these relatively unused tools, Adobe Acrobat, that allow you to scan directly into a PDF, that allow you to turn multiple JPEGs into a PDF, and if it's typed text, it allows you to read it and make it searchable. It adds a layer with the actual text to the image. So we usually just use this for reading, but the more powerful aspect is creating PDFs. And when you have a lot of JPEGs out of your research, then this Adobe becomes a very cool tool for creating, right? And it's let's say that you get, let me see if I can find one here. I'll get you the manual for my stereo, unrelated to my work. This is a searchable text because you can see that the text is readable and copyable. You can copy it. It's not just an image, right? So with the tools on this side, scan and OCR. If this were not a searchable text, you could turn it into a searchable text with that tool, right? And there's many different menus over here to improve the PDF. And if you have a PDF that's very large, there's a tool for shrinking the size of the PDF and so forth. But the critical piece is how you can turn JPEGs, multiple JPEGs, into one PDF. And if the JPEGs include typed text, Adobe can read them. Adobe Acrobat can read it and turn it into searchable. Right? Here are the full list of tools here. Right? You can, of course, rotate. If you have 100 different JPEGs that have the same mistake in them, that it included additional information that you don't want in the final product, you can change the margins of the JPEGs systematically with one edit. It can be applied to all of the JPEGs as, you know, let's say cut off the right hand side 1 inch, right? Apply it to all because that's the mistake that you made, and then you end up with a PDF that excludes that unnecessary margin or material in the PDF. And that, of course, preserves your original JPEGs. You can insert then comments to a PDF as well. So if you have a workflow in which you produce PDFs or you have PDFs, you can annotate PDFs and then you can extract those notes from the PDF in case you want to turn them into Word files or make them searchable with a different tool. Right? Now, as powerful as this is, I prefer ABBYY Fine Reader for managing the fancier stuff that I do because it has better OCR. It will OCR images of multi-column documents and preserve the structure of the columns and the footnotes. So it's much smarter about how it reads your images and turns them into searchable or into Word. This is fantastic for turning them into Word because it preserves a lot of the formatting. Then you have to tweak it in Word. Nothing is perfect, right? And from hundreds of scans on my file manager, I can select them, say combine in, there's a menu option on the right click menu, send it to Fine Reader and combine them into one searchable PDF, and it does it automatically. Not only that, but, and this is mentioned at the end of the presentation, with both of these programs you can pick many PDFs at one time and make them searchable, and it'll take a long time in your computer. It might very well take a whole day because it's going through the PDFs and identifying readable text and then converting it and resaving the file. But it's a brilliant tool for those that work with typewritten material or typeset material. For 19th century stuff and older, you can still PDF it, you just can't OCR it. right? But there's a benefit to PDFing that works on top of the quality of your images as captured as JPEGs or TIFF format, right? Okay, so those are the two tools for PDF. There's really not that many more out there. The ones that are out there just basically do the same sort of thing, or automate the process, or work industrial scale as opposed to the kind of individual work that we do. Note taking. Note taking is really, really important, and it's important that you have a utility that allows you to quickly capture notes, quickly sort and edit notes, including lots of notes. The standard utility for this, the most common one, is Evernote. And Evernote is subscription based. It works on your phone, including a very quick note capturing function on the phone, and then it synchronizes itself over different platforms, so it's always available to you. You can view the notes in your phone, which is really cool. So you create notebooks, which are like folders with subjects, and then inside those you have, let's look at my food and cooking notebook, right? Because not all of this is professional. Evernote, you can basically, I mean, it's intuitive. You can name them, merge them, cut and paste them. But what's cool is that they're searchable and they're on your phone. And when you sort them and classify them, it's immensely helpful with other non-professional work. But it because of the notebook structure, it keeps your personal or other stuff away from your research part if you name them correctly. And I have a structure here, for example, that the syntax that I use everywhere. It's research and my different projects, right? So at any one time, these are the things that I'm working on, or that I have worked on, and they're distinct projects. So in each one of those, I have distinct notes. And the cool thing about this as well, let me show you Research New York City, is that you can capture from the web browser or capture from your email things that go directly into your inbox, and then you sort them into appropriate notebook, or you tag it as you send it so that it automatically goes into the right notebook, right? So this one, for example, this is a web clip, and you can see that it has a web address over here. And this is something that I happen to stumble into when I'm on Facebook, and like, I want this, so I save it, and it goes to Evernote, and then it gets sorted appropriately. Then I have lists for what Research Assistant is doing or should be doing based on my instructions. I have this originated as an email, and you know, because it includes my email header here, which I'm more than glad to delete. Random notes that I find God knows when in the middle of the night reading something, like, wait, I have to write that down. This one doesn't even have a header, but at least I know when I wrote it. Little snippets of data that eventually find their way into more complex notes, and eventually find the way out of Evernote and into a separate system, right? Which is really important also. Now, there's many alternatives. Microsoft has OneNote, which does exactly the same kind of stuff. A little less sophisticated in how it's organized, the interface. And Notion, for example, which is the alternative that I might be using, right? utility. So whatever you do here, it shows up on the website. Fairly similar. And each one of these has benefits and so forth. This one is free, as far as I remember. With Evernote, anything beyond the basic functions you have to pay for, but I highly recommend Evernote. So probably the most advanced high-level tool that you can have for text-based work is an indexer. Now, you can do basic searches here in Windows File Manager in this box here, right? And actually, if you look up the instructions for searching this your files, it'll search whatever folder is open, right? But you can limit by date, you can limit by type of file, you know, star.pdf, whatever, right? You can do keywords, and it's full text, whatever word is in there. But the results are messy and the criteria are messy. So, you know, for a quick search you can use that one. But for sophisticated searches you need this. And this allows you to filter the kind of search. So for example, I can do just my New York City project, and that's all the data that's under a specific folder, because that's how I structured it. I can search for specific types of file names, and if keywords were in those files, I could restrict to a certain kind of keyword terms, right, or author and so forth, right? And I can do, you know, simple searches, and I can sort the results in whatever way I like, view what folder it came from, and since I'm limiting it to notes, it's anything that I have labeled as notes, and that's a thing that I do, anything that is a notes file, so that I can find it later easily without having to go into the folders. The word notes is in the title, and you can see it highlighted in yellow here. And then I can see the content, and I can do search within the file here, right? And it highlights the word in the file. It shows me here where it's at, right? And you can do Boolean searching, right? Barrio and East. And at the file level, it indexes and does Boolean searches. So if in the file, for example, this file, the words East and Barrio are in there somewhere, that's why it showed me this file. So it's file level indexing, which is an incentive for you to break down your note files into smaller pieces, into smaller, and not have really long files of notes where, of course, it's going to show up all the time because it has all the words are in there. Whereas if you separate your notes discretely into smaller bits and pieces, it'll give you, in a Boolean search of Barrio and East, those notes that have smaller content with those keywords in them. So, and I haven't really practiced that consistently because I initially started with, you know, note files that are like hundreds of pages long, and now I'm in the process of subdividing them so that when the index finds them, they're a little bit more productive. And here I can change the keyword that I searched for, East. It'll show me where it's at. You can not include words like least. That's one of the options in the software, but I've actually found it useful to include other versions of the word, and there's a way to truncate it in the search, something like that. And it shows you why it's important to correct your spelling. So one of those in-between things that you do with your notes is to make sure that everything is spelled correctly. And that's very easy to do with the spelling checker. Or if you want to get fancy, you do searches for mistyped versions, right? And then you go into where you find them and you fix them right here with this kind of tool. So this is really, really powerful. You can save your searches. I saved one search, minimum wage. Okay, I'll edit out that portion. So you can customize, you can do emails, you can use this for music only, you can use it for graphics only, you can change the preview pane. Now there's a few alternatives to this. Not that many, but a few. And I'll show you one. I don't use it, I don't have it installed. It's called X1. And it's pretty much the same kind of thing. X1 seems to be designed a little bit more with offices. Copernic, kind of a more general use. And of course, these all cost money, right? And they keep getting more sophisticated because they will search. For example, Copernic searches, if you ask it to, inside your PDF. So if you have all these searchable PDFs, it'll find all the words inside. It'll index all the words inside your PDF and make them searchable. And X1 does all of that. I haven't looked at X1 lately to see if they have anything that's particularly powerful. Now, the thing that these things don't do is that they are dumb. They don't interpret for you. They're not text oriented per se in a meaningful sort of way, so they don't give you a sense of the words, the misspellings, cloud maps of words, and the indexing is at document level. In other words, you're looking for two words. Those two terms are in a document. It'll show you that document, but it doesn't allow you to narrow down the search so that you can instruct it to search for the two terms that are inside a paragraph or even in the same sentence, which is the way one particular tool that's very advanced can do it. But it's a very sophisticated and hard to use tool. So basically, the searching is at the level of documents when you use Boolean operators, when you use AND especially, which is the most common one. There's other functions that, for example, these don't integrate with Word. So you're working in Word and you want to search something, you just need to go to the app separately. And there's no real integration of results with Word or integrated searching of items in Word. And I've written to Copernic to try to suggest them to do this, but they're very conservative because they need to sell these products to tens of thousands of people. Okay, that's it. Clipping softwares are very important because they allow you to save stuff quickly and then organize it. And the primitive version is to just cut and paste off a screen, right? This particular screen doesn't have anything that's but that kind of thing, and you just cut and paste it somewhere else. But this is Snagit. This is a random website. It's a random. The pop-up for the cut and paste. I get to define the zone that I want. Could be anything, small, large, scrolling through the whole screen. Could do a video, could do audio, can capture additional voice and sound and so forth. But basically right now I just want a photo of this. Captured it. And I go to the editor for Snagit. And there it is. This is the same functionality of recording, that little red button. So there it is. Snag, and then I can do all sorts of things to the resulting image. Windows has a built-in clipper that's fairly simple. It's called Snipping Tool. And let me see if I can show it to you here. And basically it's the same basic concept, it just has a lot less options. Snagit has a lot of options for what you do with the results of the snag, of the cut, right? This one is just very primitive, but it's free, right? And if you add Power Tools to your Windows, and which is a add-on module for additional utilities in Windows called Power Tools, it enhances the snipping tool, right? And usually it's just, you press a key and whatever you just took a snapshot of shows up here. And it's basically a graphic or a short video. But the processing of it in Snagit, for example, it could turn the graphic into text immediately, right? So if what you're trying to capture is text, you end up with editable, cut and pastable text immediately, right? In most of the tools that I describe and use, time is not a function. So you kind of need a tool that helps you organize tasks over time in a sequential way. And this is where a task manager is useful. And there's many different versions of this. I decided to use ToDoist because it had the best features and flexibility for projects, and also it integrated with Evernote. And basically it's a to-do list, and you create items that can be randomly in your inbox or sorted by project with a due date and with various filters and labels if you want them. And you can see them as what's due today, or you can see them searchable, or you can see them by project. However you organize your projects and your favorites. See, I have these here. It gives me a list of things that I need to do, and each one of these is editable, fixable, changeable. It can send me an email every day with the things I have to do today. And as you can see here, all of these things are way overdue. The one thing about this system is that I haven't consistently used a short list. I need to create a short list as opposed to the gazillion other items that are not as important. So the short list is basically done through tagging. Priority 1 projects, so that when you want to see the short list, you just see the priority 1 items and not all the other stuff that might or might not be important to you. And the way that this talks to Evernote is you can link a date record to a note record. Now Evernote is increasing its sophistication in the direction of being a task manager with dates, but it's not quite there yet. So if in a calendar item I could enter review notes on whatever, and I establish a link to an Evernote record. Or integration also works with other files. So I could say open this Word file and fix it. That's a task. Then the file link is in there, right? This is the powerful thing about this software is integration, right? Which I'll talk about in a second separately. So the other cool thing is that this synchronizes just like Evernote with my phone. And I can enter items really quickly from the phone, and I can view all of this from the phone. So it's, customizable, but it's still relatively simple. Simplicity here matters a lot, right? Because when you want to do a task list, you don't want to be overwhelmed with 100 things that you can't do. So this helps you really sort them into appropriate boxes and appropriate hierarchies of time to keep it simple. So, highly recommend it. Bibliographic management is another thing that is a powerful tool, but you need to plan for it carefully and start early. And because these are bibliographies that you're going to use for the rest of your life, probably. So this is Endnote. Endnote is free to Rutgers. This is the old version, which I prefer to the new version. So basically you have specific libraries. I organize them whatever way you want. The idea is to be more inclusive, so I do the really big projects, New York City, for example, from which I work different sub-projects. But this is data, so data can be used in different ways. So I have a different one for New Jersey, but has significant overlap. Another one for Puerto Rico, one for teaching, and so New York is the biggest one. And basically you can import bibliographic citations from your databases on the library system, right? From our catalog, from WorldCat, from JSTOR, from Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature. So for one thing, it brings you the record, bibliographic citation, sometimes with errors, sometimes you have to fix it, right? And I'll show you one. This is a reference, right? And there it is. It's not formatted. You can set it to be formatted, but you get the title, journal, dates, issue number, whatever. All of this came automatically from the record, from the database. And I edit it for adding keywords, editing out stuff that I don't like, don't need. It's numbered, right? And most important, it has an annotation field. In this case, I don't have an annotation. Let me see if I can find an item that has annotations. Yeah, here we got research notes, Paul Sanchez, right? Can't find the page. So notes to myself, basically. And the cool thing about the research notes, or any of these fields, but is that they're searchable, right, later. So you get the citation, technically correct, the library that you found it in, you can edit that, the call number. This is New York Public, and NYU has 2 copies of it. This is a journal, actually, a periodical, and some notes, right? And then it allows you to do searches of the notes and of the cataloging data. And any of the data, you can specify. It's like your own Google, right, for your bibliographic records and your notes. So anything that is a note from a book published, anything published, I enter it here. And Ooh, I want to see this. So you can sort it here by whatever way you want. I right now have them sorted by year, I think. You can show columns based on whatever you want. When it was added, when it was updated, the keywords. You can even see your notes here if you want to. And then you can save into groups. And some of these groups automatically update. In other words, you create a group that says include anything with a keyword that's IBEW. And anytime you enter a new record that has a keyword that says IBEW, it'll add it to that group. So it suddenly provides me a shortcut to records that I have tagged as mobility in the keywords. Right? And I added keywords later. That's sort of the post-processing that I've tried to do with the more important pieces. And these are the items that are tagged as mobility, right? I also tagged items as right now. Or triple star items, right? Triple star items are items that I know when I'm entering them or I'm entering notes will be really important. So then I have to find the triple star items later because I made a note to myself through that tagging that those are the juiciest notes for some reason, right? Whatever reason it might be. And of course, the brilliant thing about this is that you can create bibliographies, and this integrates into Word. So when you're working on Word, you can insert a footnote in whatever format you decide, or a footnote with a page number for these items, or note, not a footnote, or an endnote, or an in-text citation, whichever format you want. And then when the data gets updated, it updates the record. Or when you change the formatting style that you want for that Word file, Chicago, MLA, whatever, it automatically updates it. So I would strongly recommend that you invest in learning Endnote. There's a lot of tutorials on the internet. Unfortunately, Rutgers doesn't offer courses on this, but you probably don't need them. The company has many of them. It's extremely powerful. And you can actually do searching from within here. In other words, you don't even need to go into the databases. If you see that little globe on the upper left, EndNote allows you to talk directly to the databases under certain conditions and just bring in records directly. This is amazingly powerful. It just requires some time to learn, right? And I highly recommend it. And this view that has a font, you can change the font, make it bigger, right? You can make all of this text bigger if you want it. And then you can swap and share references from one library to another. And you can group it. You can group them. And you could edit them and so forth. So this is extremely powerful. I mean, I couldn't live without this. Couldn't work without it. Then there's not too many alternatives to this now. There's a few that are free that are just not as powerful. So I would recommend at Rutgers, learn the real deal. Zotero is free, but it's not as powerful, and you really want to start with a tool that's going to have the more features for later. The records are exportable, so if you start with Zotero and then move to EndNote, you can export the records as well, but you might as well. Anyway, this is the only program I'll present because it's the best. It's an industry standard, if you see here, let me show you one that has a reference, and then it has file attachments. So the actual PDF resides as part of the record. And I have a lot of PDFs that all I do is copy them over. So there's a copy of it within Endnote. It's its own separate place, but you can then look at it within Endnote. Or when you import the record from a database, it brings the PDF with it. And of course, then this PDF is searchable if it's text, if it has text. And this gives you a citation style, actually a preview of the citation. For some reason, the style I picked has the web link, which I usually edit out completely from the record because it's not really important to me, and I'm never going to include it in any footnoting. So anyway, so that's Endnote, and you can see here that it has quite a few other options for managing the records. So take a peek at it. This set of routines has something to do with software and something to do with your habits, and they go together: saving, sending, archiving, and backing up. And they're the kind of thing you kind of delay for later, but saving, you're obviously used to saving files on your hard drive, right, or your SSD drive, but when you're doing critical work, I would recommend that you simultaneously save to two different gadgets. And there's a way to do that with some software. There's different options for that, but basically that means that whenever you are working on a Word file and let's say, well, whatever, a Word file, and you press save, it automatically copies it to a second gadget on your computer. That can be a USB drive, it can be a second built-in SSD drive, an SD card, whatever your computer holds. So you're saving two copies of the same thing at the same time. So that's recommended. Sending has to do with ways of accessing any cloud storage that you might have, which, whether it's Google Drive, OneNote, or Box, or Dropbox. But the critical thing there, and I'm not going to show you the details, but the critical thing is automating the integration so that you don't have to go through the browser, right? And in my case, for example, here, this tab here, Box, has a utility, and they all have it. And there's different ways of doing it, but Box appears as my own part of my hard drive, even though it isn't. In other words, these files here in Box are not on my computer. They are at Rutgers in the cloud. You can see the little cloud icon there. And whenever I want to save something there, I can just access it as if it were a hard drive, right, on my computer. It used to be that you had to file map with some instructions, but that's no longer the case. These things are now going to be automated. And if you see here my drive over here, that drive is my Google Drive, and I've mapped it in two different ways. So in my system it appears actually twice, but I can copy from or copy to files. So the point is to facilitate access. It used to be that you had to use an FTP tool to connect to the cloud, whichever drive is far away on the internet. But these things are now automatic, unless you're doing a kind of a custom setup where you use FTP. At Rutgers, we used to have network drives that could be accessed by FTP file mapping or WebDAV file mapping. But again, you don't need to do that anymore. So that's the sending part, and the sending part is sort of a technicality. It doesn't do anything by itself. You just facilitate it so that when you decide to do the next two things, it's more integrated and more easily available to you. And the next two things are backing up. And I strongly recommend that you get a backup utility that's automated if your system doesn't already have one, and that you really learn how to automate it. So I have 5 different backup drives and different routines for backing up. And some of these are automated so that every day Google Drive gets my specified folders, which are most of them, but I exclude certain folders, get backed up automatically to my Google Drive folder, right? And it sounds complicated, but it really isn't. So every day the computer automatically, if it's connected and it's on, it checks, and for any changes, it runs a routine. And in this case, it's designed to be a backup. If you can also design it to be a update, so that if any changes happened in the other computer, let's say, they get transferred over, right? So you're syncing 2 different drives. If you happen to be working on 2 different drives at the same time, not 2 different files, but 2 different drives. So in this case, it's a backup to Google Drive. It's this one. And it'll tell you what it's doing on the right side, if there's any conflicts, if it was not able to run. So usually there's some miscellaneous data that it can't figure out, but usually it's not important. So I back up my music and I back up my photos into different drives with different routines. The only one that's automated is Google Drive, because that's every day. This thing here, for example, is a separate desktop computer that I have that's older, but that has massive storage. So I synchronize my laptop with that machine through the same software, and it's not talking to a USB drive, it's not talking to the cloud, it's talking to another computer that it has access to, right? And obviously most of these are USB drives or SSD or traditional hard drives. So the point is, backup automatically and backup to multiple sites, and also the next piece is archive. And this utility is not good for archiving, because an archive is a version of everything you have as of a given date. Not a backup per se, although it works as a backup, but it's not active. In other words, you make a full separate copy of whatever you have, of everything you have, hopefully, and you save it, and you try to save it somewhere else outside of your apartment or home, so that forever that will be the record of where things stood as of that date. That's where you try to use quality hardware, either a hard drive or a SSD. And if you have the space, and this is where it's important to get things that have capacity, you'll have hard drives, multiple hard drives with multiple archives of everything you have, or at least the most important part, the stuff that you want to archive, the stuff that changes. And this is useful if files get corrupted, if they get corrupted in the backing up process, if they get corrupted and the corrupt file gets backed up, and your file transferring replaces a good file with a bad file because you think you made some changes to it. So as of a certain date, you have everything, and you can go back and reconstruct some pieces. That's in an emergency. But I've had to do that kind of thing maybe 3 or 4 times in a couple of decades. But trust me that It was very valuable when I couldn't find the file. And I had accidentally deleted it, and then the backup process, I had set it up to delete, to share the deletion, so it gets deleted in the backup. So a backup, like on Google Drive, is active. That's how I set it up, right? So that whatever changes happen on my drive, they happen automatically in the other side, right? Otherwise, you end up with a lot of junk if you delete stuff from your computer and don't delete them from the backup. Then you end up with everything that you ever had without the choices and selections that you've made. So that much is for this final section of software tools. And the software that I showed you that I'm using for backing up is called GoodSync. And it costs a little bit of money, but there's many other versions of this, and they pretty much all do the same thing. What I liked about this one was that the menu on the left, I found it very flexible, and I found very easy to do the automation. There's other versions of backing up software. Okay, so that's the end of part 1. And this is a list of the software that's been presented. See you next time.